by a couple of other individuals as well, in particular Mike Boyce, who will be speaking after I've concluded my remarks. Mike, of course, will introduce himself, I'm sure, but he's a developmental psychologist with the University of Calgary. Mike, really delighted to have you here. Thank you for being here. And as well, after Mike, we'll be joined by Vicky Leong, a teacher with Aurora Secondary School in Edmonton. Vicky, thanks so much for being here as well and for offering your insights and perspectives. It's really important that we're here today because, as I'm sure we all know, cell phones are an ever-present feature of our daily lives, and Alberta's classrooms are no exception. Cell phones, as I'm sure we all know, can be used as a research and learning tool to stay up to date on other activities, practice schedules, club activities, way to be connected with family and stay connected with loved ones, and of course enrich our lives in a variety of different ways. However, they of course can also be a distraction and can limit a student from reaching their full potential, and they can, in some instances, put the mental health of the young person at risk. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Applied Cognitive Psychology found that students who were permitted to use cell phones reported a higher degree of distraction and achieved worse test performance than those who were not allowed to use cell phones in a classroom. A 2017 study linked minors' use of social media enabled in school by smartphones to depression and an increased risk of suicide. A 2016 study showed that smartphone use in school correlates to reduced educational success. And another study found that 8th graders who were heavy social media users increased their risk of depression by 27%. The risks to student mental well-being and academic success are real, and we must take steps now to combat these effects. Over the past few months, I've had the opportunity to hear from parents, teachers, and other educational partners that we should open the door to reviewing the use of personal mobile devices and social media in schools. And I'm happy to follow through on that request today. I've spent the last few months connecting with those most closely impacted, students, parents, and teachers and other partners, to discuss the realities of cell phones and other personal mobile devices in schools. This included a survey that saw more than 68,000 parents, teachers, and principals provide their input. On this note, I just want to take a moment to thank our school boards and other partners who circulated this survey so that we could capture an incredibly wide perspective of Alberta's views. At 68,000 responses, I'm told it's the highest responded survey ever. And clearly, parents and teachers alike have some clear views on this topic. The survey results were clear that the use of cell phones is of significant concern and that additional measures should be taken to limit cell phone use in our classrooms. And so today I am announcing that effective for the fall 2024-25 school year, starting this September and August in some cases, students will no longer be permitted to use personal mobile devices during class time. And I'm further announcing that access to social media sites in schools will be restricted. I am confident that these restrictions will reduce distractions, maximize learning time, support student mental health, and reduce opportunities for cyberbullying. The new rules will be in place, as I mentioned, for the 24-25 school year at the beginning of the next school year, which occurs late August to early September. Students, again, will no longer be able to use personal mobile devices during class time or to access social media sites. Personal mobile devices include cell phones, smartphones, smartwatches, headphones, and other personal electronic devices. There will be a few situations when students can use a phone during class time if needed for medical or health reasons, if needed to support special learning needs, or if directed by a teacher or any other reason as determined by a principal on a case-by-case basis. These rules will apply to all public, separate francophone, public charter, and independent school authority. These rules present minimum standards, and a board has the autonomy and flexibility to implement additional restrictions if they so choose. During class time, all personal devices must be turned off and be stored out of sight. This could be a backpack, a locker, or any other area as determined by an individual school board. School boards will be given flexibility to decide what enforcement should look like at their respective schools and what the consequences for non-compliance will be. However, school boards will be required to notify parents and guardians if their child violates the new rules. Individual school boards will also have the flexibility to decide how exceptions should be managed. That being said, again, all school boards must allow exceptions for students using mobile devices for health or medical reasons or to support special learning needs. As I mentioned before, we also recognize that personal mobile devices can be an important research and learning tool. That is why personal mobile devices will also be permitted for educational or other purposes as determined by a principal or equivalent on a case-by-case basis. I'm confident that together these restrictions will reduce distractions, maximize learning time, support student mental health, and reduce opportunities for cyberbullying. As the current school year draws to a close, I know that many parents and students will have questions about what these restrictions will look like at their local school. So again, to reiterate, at the beginning of the upcoming school year, all personal mobile devices will not be permitted during instructional time. My department will also be working closely with school authorities over the next few days, weeks, and months to support them with implementation. Parents and guardians should stay tuned to their local school authority over the coming months for more details regarding enforcement and compliance rules. Thank you again for joining me. It's now my privilege and pleasure to pass things to Mike Boyce, again, a developmental psychologist with the University of Calgary, for his perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon. As mentioned, I'm a developmental psychologist. And over the last 40 years, and then some, I've taught and done research on the development of teens and young adults. And I've examined the preparations that our students make and the paths that they choose as they transition out of high school. And I've looked at what we as teachers and what educators in general can do to help them manage that transition most effectively. Now, I'm old enough to remember a lot of things, but I'm old enough to remember that we used to help our students multitask as part of our research and teaching agendas. Now, that's not such a good idea. We're still working on figuring out the full impacts of social media use on our students, but we're very clear, the research is very clear, that smartphones in the classroom negatively impact students' abilities to focus and sustain their attention on their learning, but also on important developmental things like critical thinking, problem solving, planning skills, and on the building of the kinds of self-efficacy that they need to manage their engagement with social media, but also their engagement with their lives as they move on out of our school systems. We also know that the distractions that are built into smartphones when available in education settings are widening the gap between low and high functioning students. Because of all this, I think the strategy of moving to limit access to smartphones in our schools is an important step towards helping our students focus their attention on the learning and the development they need to do in order to flourish in the world that they're going to move into when they move out of school. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. My name is Vicki Leong, and I'm a long-serving teacher at Aurora Academic Charter Secondary School in Edmonton. I applaud the Government of Alberta for taking the initiative to limit personal mobile devices and social media in our schools. At both our primary and secondary Aurora campuses, which range in grades from kindergarten to grade 11, and with the addition of grade 12 in the fall, we have policies in place that restrict the use of cell phones and personal devices during class time. I know firsthand that this announcement today will benefit students across the province. This announcement validates that what we have been doing at Aurora Charter School is in the best interest of our students' learning and ensures teachers can focus on delivering the curriculum without competing with cell phone distractions. I am sure that teachers can agree with me that the ping or vibration of a cell phone can disrupt the flow of a lesson or the overall focus of learning in a classroom. Even students who want to focus on learning may be distracted by their peers' cell phones, which isn't fair to those who are unintentionally distracted by the choices of others. At Aurora Charter School, we have always enforced a no cell phone policy in classrooms. New students quickly adhere to this policy and understand its importance. A whole school policy sends a clear message to both students and staff that this rule applies to everyone and in all classes. I've spoken with new students to our schools who actually expressed relief that they have had to keep their phones in their lockers during class time. Many have said that they feel a sense of relief and that they can focus on learning and take a break from the constant barrage of posts, notifications, and the demands of social media. We are living in a world that is becoming more digital than ever, and our classrooms are no exception. Technology is alive and well at Aurora Charter School, as in many schools across the province, and there's no disputing this. However, as educators, it's our job to use technology positively, enhancing learning rather than allowing it to become a distraction. Thank you to the Government of Alberta for implementing these standards to keep our classrooms safe and conducive to learning.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. Unfortunately, due to some technical issues, the teleconference feature will not be available. So we're going to take questions in the room for the minister. So if you have a question, please make your way to the microphone and please keep it to one question, one follow-up, and state your name and outlet.
Hi, Terry from CTV Calgary. First and foremost, I was wondering if you can speak more to the survey and if that will be made public and why or why not.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to speak a little bit more to the survey. Haven't had the opportunity to explore further whether we intend to publish the results, but I'd be happy to get back to you as we look at that in a little bit more detail. But I do have a little bit more information that I can share. The survey ran during March into early April as well. As I mentioned, we received 68,000 responses. It really took off, and I think that shows and demonstrates that there's a lot of interest. 90% of respondents, and actually I should back up just a bit. When I say respondents, of course, our primary target audience with the survey was parents primarily, and also teachers and educators. We really hit that mark. The vast majority of respondents were parents and teachers. And so 90% of them advised concern generally over cell phone use in school. That's coming from both parents and teachers. 85% of respondents believe that cell phones have a negative impact on student achievement. 81% believe that cell phones increase the incidence of bullying. And about 60% of parents said that having a cell phone negatively impacts their child's mental health. Teachers, their views when we parsed them out and just looked at parents versus teachers to see if there was some different results there, they were almost identical in terms of the desire to see greater restrictions and their views about distractions and concerns. We also asked teachers as well how often they direct students to use them. The vast majority of respondents indicated that they never, if very rarely, direct students to use cell phones at schools, and did note that they are significant sources of distraction. So there was a high degree of consensus, if you will, in the survey results. We didn't see any major areas where there was a significant disagreement.
And were they asked if they wanted them removed from classrooms directly?
Yes, we did ask very directly at varying grade levels as well, when and if they believe that students should use them. And Interestingly, although not too surprisingly, parents and teachers believe that in younger grades, there should be very, very limited few, if any, reasons or exceptions as to why students should use them, realizing that as students get older, there can be situations where we might be able to be a little bit more flexible and grant them a little bit more autonomy over use of cell phones. And so there was quite a degree of, again, conformity in those views.
And I was just wondering if you could speak to, as minister, talking about the downsides of social media and personal mobile devices and cell phones in class, but also balancing that with just how much technology is used
Right.
every day. And then these students in grade 12 who are going to move on to university, we spoke to many today saying a lot of their applications are on their phones for school. And when they get out into the real world, we use it
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, so a couple of points on that. Of course, the ban relates to class time. So during breaks, students will have the ability to use their devices, recognizing, as you mentioned, I think a lot of those pieces, that's how the world operates today. So we need to set them up for success, and smartphone use and other personal mobile use is mainstay, and it's here to stay. So we have to set them up for success, and we have to make sure they're exposed to that, and of course are using different apps to plan their schedules, calendars, respond to emails as they're going, that type of thing. That's what we do. Of course, that's probably what they'll be expected to do when they're adults, whether that's in post-secondary or in the job market. And so I think we got the right balance in terms of giving them some flexibility during breaks, but during class time, your attention should be focused on what you're learning and what the outcomes of your instruction is. And furthermore, I would say, it's here to stay. Just technology broadly, of course, and cell phone use. And I don't believe it's very helpful or beneficial to students to just, create an environment whereby we say it's totally banned, you can't use it, can't touch it, don't look at it. I don't think that's really helpful. They're going to experience technology use, smartphone use, social media use as they become adults. So having them kind of graduate into that, I think, is a responsible way. And well, of course, the government is always continuing to move forward with other curriculum changes as well. And in the previous government, we made some recent changes to develop the new physical education and wellness component for K to 6. Of course, we'll be looking at the 7 to 12 of that piece and other pieces. So I believe that there are opportunities, even within our structured curriculum, to talk about these matters in a responsible way and to help prepare students for success.
All right. Any other questions in the room?
Sure.
Hi, I'm David Kim with Livewire Calgary. I guess my first question was, since cell phones have been an issue in classrooms for a while, how come this is only being implemented in the 24-25 year?
Sure. Well, a 24-25 year, of course, is just a few months away. Starts towards the end of August, beginning of September. School year is coming to an end now, so probably not the best time at the end of a school year to put in a new policy in place. We want to make sure that students, teachers, and administrators have some time to prepare for the new policy being implemented in September/late August.
I meant more along the lines of why it hasn't been covered earlier, because cell phones.
Oh, I see. Why haven't we done it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
understood. Okay, my apologies. Yeah, good question. Of course, I think there's a lot of different variables to that. I know over the past few years, of course, trying to contend through COVID and navigate through those complexities, and the priorities of policymakers, changes over time. One of the things for me as minister that drove me to really take a close look at this was a realization that the government of Alberta, in the Ministry of Education, has a technology use framework. And we use that framework to provide guidance and direction to our school boards about technology use. The document's 10 years old, so we probably need to do some updating of that general policy document. And a recognition of that, I think, was a need to have a closer look at some of the rules relating to cell phones and social media as a first step. But I think needs to be more work done. We haven't even gotten on the topic of artificial intelligence and chat GPT and other things. So I think we need to just be responsive to changing technology.
Right. Thank you. I'll just move to the next question here.
Hi there, Nick with City News Calgary. Just really quick, if we're asking the government to step in to kind of standardize how cell phones are used in the school system, why so much allowances for each school board to enforce, or how much control that they have? Like, I'm a little confused by giving them such power, but yet trying to standardize it at the same time.
Sure. Well, recognizing that school divisions are different, operate in different communities, have different demographics. So I don't always believe in a one size fits all policy. Is the best approach. So we've set some minimum standards. Can't use your cell phone in class. Can't use your personal mobile device in class, and some other minimum standards. As I mentioned earlier, if a school board wants to impose some rules that are a little bit tighter, they're welcome to do that. And how a school board determines enforcement and deals with non-compliance, I think is best handled by the individual school board and where the devices are stored. I know some school boards or some schools have lock boxes at the front of the class, some don't. So I think creating a one size fits all policy as it relates to those kinds of questions might create some complexities. One school board might say, if you keep the phone in your backpack, it's good enough. Another might say, if you got to keep it in your locker. Our minimum requirements are that it's off and it's out of sight. So provided you meet that, we're okay with how you work through it.
And just one quick follow-up, and it might be a little too early to ask this question. To implement this, like we've seen that there's obviously an effect by having these cell phones in the classroom. Is there anything already in plan, like say 2 years, we'll look back and see how the standardization of the rules are taking effect? Like, is there plans for that in a couple of years? Let's go back and let's see how these implementation or the standardization is working.
Yeah, we don't have a firm date whereby we intend to kind of go back and look at that. However, with the development of any new initiative or policy, we want to make sure it's effective and successful. So I will be talking with our school boards and teachers and other partners over the next few months and years to see how things are working out, whether there needs to be any tweaks or modifications. I think it's important to be responsive and adaptive. So we'll always be doing that. And I think it would be interesting as well, and I'll leave this to the academics to look at any relationship between today's decision and changes to academic success rates, performance rates, mental health issues, or instances of cyberbullying. Some of the studies that we've looked at in the ministry do point to improvements in grades and decreases of bullying and other incidents as a result of similar policies. But of course, no two situations are completely identical. So I best leave that to the researchers and academics to be able to draw some of those correlations.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you everyone for coming. Unfortunately, that concludes today, and sorry about the live stream dial-in not working. If you have questions, please just email me. My phone number and email is on the bottom of the meeting notice. Thank you all for coming.
Great. Thank you.